Senator Rand Paul, where would you like to begin, sir?
I think General Milley is the most pressing problem of the moment. We can't have generals talking to foreign countries and saying, hey, we think our president might bomb you, so be prepared. I'm going to try to stop him. That actually might cause an accidental war. Think about it. We have different things that are launched into space all the time, satellites, this and that, and they can be misinterpreted as a missile.
Yes.
If they were, we call each other and say, no, that's a satellite, not a missile. But what if a general has just called the Chinese dictator and said, our president is going to probably launch, I'll try to stop him, but we think he might launch an attack. They might interpret a satellite and some kind of launch into space as a missile, and all of a sudden you have a nuclear war going on. It's incredibly dangerous. Not to mention that there are a host of reasons we have a chain of command, not to mention that we have elections. Presidents are elected. Milley wasn't elected to be president. I can't even tell you how incredibly dangerous this is. He needs to be called in today and asked under polygraph what he said to the Chinese president or to his counterpart in China. And did he have permission to do so?
Now they just released some information, the Pentagon did, that said these happen all the time, and there were lots of people on the call, and it happened with the State Department. But did it happen with the president's permission? The State Department does a lot of things where they don't care who the president is. That's not our system. So is there any circumstance where this would be, as far as you understand it today, where this would be acceptable?
I think it depends on what is said. I mean, if he was insinuating that he would go outside the chain of command and that the president was capable of launching an attack on China, that to me is something he should be cashiered. He should be court-martialed. But, everybody gets their day in court, so we need to know what's true and what's not true. And so we need to hear from him. But this accusation, you talk about a bombshell, this is a bombshell accusation, but it kind of fits with a guy that seems to be a chameleon. He sort of tried to act as if he was supportive of President Trump's policy. He immediately becomes some sort of politically correct culture warrior when Biden is elected. Many people who are rank and file, and I talk to people in the military all the time, will tell me that these people who rise up to the top end up becoming more politicians than military leaders. But, you want another excuse for getting rid of Milley? Look at the disastrous withdrawal. I mean, you can't imagine a more disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. And the decision to give up Bagram Air Force Base before the Americans were exited from the country is probably one of the worst military decisions, and that alone ought to get Milley fired.
May I just bring up an idea? Yesterday the Senate received a lot of promotion nominations in the armed services, and usually it just happens with the Senate and the Armed Forces Committee. Is there anything to the idea of just saying we're not promoting anyone until this man resigns? No promotions. We're not considering it until this man resigns.
It's a thought. I would have to think through it, and I don't have the power. The chairman of the Armed Service Committee does. That's a Democrat, but I think the ranking member also may be able to hold up promotions. Yeah. You're right. It's rarely done, but I'm not so sure punishing the people being promoted actually causes him to fire Milley. If you actually think it will, that they would back down, or if there's any precedent for it. But I have to think through it, because it's also, do you punish somebody that's been in the military for 20, 25, 30 years that's getting their promotion? So I don't know if that's the right thing to do or not. I do think that all of those who have a position to voice their opinion should be saying that Milley needs to be asked directly in an interview, I think with polygraph included, whether or not he insinuated that the president of the United States might attack them, that he was going to stop it. If he said that in a conversation, boy, we need him out of government, and the sooner the better.
And we need him out of the Pentagon if he didn't vigorously disagree with the president. I mean, I support, we have a system of checks and balances, and we have a constitution, and we have a civilian-run military. And if the president disagrees with the advice, then they either have to put their stars on the table and then go talk to the press, or they have to execute it. And if it is a legal order like Afghanistan was, but a crazy one, You either fight against it, and if this was your best effort to make it good, you need to resign. We just need to say this guy is incapable of making a good decision here. Incapable.
There's a great deal of irony in the fact that the left clamors on a daily basis about how Trump was an authoritarian and wanting to subvert democracy, and yet here we have a president, a general, wanting to subvert the chain of command, the idea of civilian-run military, etc. Everything that the left says was wrong about Trump, they were actually plotting to do. This morning on CNN, apologists, they trotted out Vindman, said this was a terrible thing to do.
I know.
But then they trot out former General Wes Clark to say, oh, this is all just normal discussions between countries. I guess it's normal for them to say, oh, we think the president's going to attack you. So it really depends on what was said. And I kind of doubt that kind of language would have been on a group phone call.
Yeah.
If you're going to say something like that, I would think it'd be more one-on-one. But the only way to get to the bottom of it is to ask him and have him take a polygraph test on what was said.
So
I can't imagine this was in a big conference call. I would think that this had to have been in a one-on-one call if it happened.
You have Blinken yesterday. You would not let him go over the target of the U.S. drone strike. We knew there was something wrong from the beginning because they wouldn't even say who the target was or who they killed. Now they're saying, we're looking into it. How are we looking into it with no one on the ground? How are we looking into that?
Well, and here's the thing is they hide behind the classification. Initially, they weren't hiding. They were saying they killed a top-level ISIS-K operative. That's what they said. They announced. And yet, yesterday in the hearing, he says he either doesn't know if it was an operative or an aid worker, and then it says it's not the right forum. So this is the way they hide. Initially, they were bragging in an unclassified way that they got this guy, and now they're saying, well, we can't tell you, there's going to be an investigation, and we frankly – but he did admit they don't know. That's why they're investigating. And I would think that they might make some decisions and think about the consequences of killing an aid worker and 12 to 14 young people or kids in that area. That creates, hundreds and hundreds of potential terrorists that will hate America for generations. And really there was something we could have done in practical fashion. Let's say that we take them at face value and they didn't think that the government and the Bagram Air Force Base would have been overrun so quickly. One thing you could have done is as soon as the Taliban took possession of Bagram Air Force Base, they should have said you have 3 minutes to leave. The vehicles were blowing up everything.
Yep.
Or if you don't exit the base, we're blowing up the whole base.
Yep.
And look, I've been against most wars. I've been against the war in Afghanistan. I've been for coming home for a long time. But I would have given that order in a heartbeat to blow up Bagram Air Force Base on the way out, though. No plane was useful. No plane was left standing. No Humvee. If there's caches of arms, they would have been blown up as well. But just what a disaster. And I just hope people get the right lesson of this. It's, some on the other side are saying the lesson is we should have stayed forever. I think the lesson is we stayed 20 years and they didn't fight one day. The president left one day. Nobody fought. Not one shot was fired to defend Bagram Air Force Base, and not one shot was fired to defend Kabul. That's an indictment of nation building and shows that 20 years and trillions of dollars didn't form a country out of these people. They were unwilling to fight for their own country.
Have to tell you, I think there's something else, and I think this will ring true to you. There were those who listened to the people in Afghanistan. That's a tribal nation. They never wanted to be Afghanistan one nation. It's a tribal nation. And the tribes all went to the Trump administration and then early on the Biden administration saying, please, let us have local control to be able to vote in our own governor, our own mayor, and our own police chief. But they were all appointed by the national government, so there was no loyalty there. Nobody wanted to fight for any of these people. And those guys were just getting fat and rich. We need to stay out of people's business and let people decide their own fate.
There was a great article by Rod Dreyer a while back from the American Conservative magazine, and he wrote about when Afghan was lost, and he showed a video of some woman giving a discussion of Dadaist art and Marcel Duchamp, the guy who did the urinal about 100 years ago, the urinal is art.
Yeah.
and they showed this woman, this professor, explaining to the Afghans why this is art. And it's like, if there's ever been an indictment of Western decadence and why they don't want to accept our ways, putting a urinal out as art, these people were rolling their eyes. There was no way they could even conceive of how stupid it is that a urinal is art. But that's the kind of crap we were spending our money trying to teach people who were like, are you kidding me? We're trying to grow enough crops to eat this year. We need to have fresh water. We don't need to be looking at a urinal that you idiots in the West believe is art.